Hey everyone, it's Colin with Eagle Eyes Mischief Productions. Thank you for joining me and welcome. And today I'm going to be showing you how I paint the probably second most popular army that I've painted for Brian at Tabletop Titans, the gray and yellow Tau that he plays. First most popular, of course, being the AdMech army, the blue AdMech. But this army is a lot of fun to paint. I love painting this scheme. It's striking, it stands out on the table, and overall it's just a great look. So today I'm going to be showing you on a couple of humble drones, and for this I'm actually going to take them off the flight stand because I want the flight stands to stay clean. I could tape those up later, but and I think I actually left these off, yeah, as well, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. For now, I'm just going to use the guns as kind of a little paint holder, but for the gray and yellow, it's very much a blue gray. So I'm going to be using Vallejo Model Air Dark Gray Blue, then a highlight of Field Blue, a final highlight of Blue Gray Pale, and then an edge highlight of Pale Blue. So you can see that nice progression. All those colors work together and kind of accentuate that desaturated blue by the time we get to the pale blue. So just a really nice kind of medium gray by the time it's all said and done. And then that's offset by a very vibrant, rich yellow, the last yellow recipe you will need. So base coat with the Vallejo Model Air yellow ochre, and then shadows of Game Air Burned Flesh, overall glaze of Game Air Gold Yellow, and then an edge highlight of Ice Yellow. You can also use like the Dorn Edge Technical from GW if you have that. You can add, white to Gold Yellow. I mean, edge highlighting yellow is pretty straightforward, but I love Ice Yellow. I think it's a color I just discovered in the last year, and I wish I had 5 years ago, but that's fine. So I'm also going to be using some 6mm Tamiya masking tape for this. So first things first, get my airbrush and get a little bit of the dark gray blue and do a base coat, overall base coat on the top. Now underneath with the where the guns and everything are is going to be black, and then I'll show you how we do the lenses and all that stuff as well, but for now we're just gonna do a little, oh my gosh. Just a little base coat. Clean that out. And a little bit of water in the cup there. Don't need much because this is not going to take a lot of paint to get this highlight down. A little bit of that field blue, which is a great blue gray. I use it frequently. Always test it on my hand first, make sure I have an adequate pressure, good spray and everything. Just hitting it with a little bit of air just to make sure everything's dry. And then I'm going to leave just the very back of the drone with that dark gray. And then I'm just going to hit it straight on to get the sides. I'm not worried about the antenna because that's going to be yellow. So I'm not really paying attention to that right now. The yellow is how I marked out kind of different squads of drones. Is they had different antenna, and then they had different kind of proportions of yellow. And so it was easier, I won't say it was easy, but it was easier to differentiate which drones were in different squads. So some drones were all yellow, some drones were all gray, some were, you know, a stripe on the left, stripe on the right, 2 stripes. Some had, you know, 1 vein that was yellow, 1 vein, the stripe would be on the other side, so the vein would be, or the antenna would be gray. So there are ways to differentiate that. You can also just put a little, you know, circle sticker on the flying stand if you know, if you get to that point. So here's a little blue gray pale, although hopefully with the next book drones will be less of a thing. One of my least favorite, actually I think Savior Protocols is my least favorite mechanic in the game, so hopefully that'll change in the next book, but we'll see. So now this is the kind of third highlight. Make sure that's dry, and this is definitely lighter, but we want that sharp contrast. Tau is all about contrast, so when I'm painting Tau I always keep that in mind. And it may seem like a lot, but then once we get through the different stages, see, it really pays off visually to have a lot of contrast on these models. So I think that looks pretty good for now. Very nice progression there, easy peasy. I'm gonna let these dry for a few minutes before I start in with the tape. You can get, which I will get a hair dryer and just make sure that it's totally dry, and then I'll come back and show you how I mask off for the yellow. So we will be back in just a second. Okay, and we're back. This is dry. So now I'm going to take the 6mm tape from Tamiya. I like Tamiya tape because it's specifically designed for this. It's a lower tack than typical, you know, masking tape or whatnot, but it's also thinner. It's just physically thinner, so you don't get those ridges as badly that you do from like painter's tape or something like that. So what we're going to do here is just get a nice kind of baseline, straight line there. And then, oop, that didn't end up very straight after that curve. Hang on. There we go. Let me pull up the front a little bit there. There we go. Oh man, you just love to see paint just rubbing right off like that. Okay, so now we're gonna set, that's fine, I'm gonna primer over that anyway and edge highlight it, so try not to let little setbacks like that. So this is gonna be off center. Try not to let little setbacks like that bother me, especially when I can just come back and fix it. It's not a big deal. It's in an area that is very, very easy to fix. So looking at that, ignore, this is at an angle. So ignore that. We're looking at the stripe and its orientation right now. Come on. Think. So that looks pretty straight. There, ignore this. Like I said, that's at an angle, so ignore that. That looks pretty good. And then we're just going to cover that. I don't care about the guns underneath because I'm going to paint that black. And then we're going to do the same thing on this one. Really, I think the the paint is still, it's not 100% dry, or it hasn't. It certainly hasn't cured yet, so that's why it's rubbing off on that corner there. But it's also because of just how quickly I'm painting. If I were doing a bigger batch, which I think I did, I don't know, 30 or 40 drones at once when I was painting for Brian. When you're doing 30 drones at once, that is definitely dry by the time you come back and try and do something else. So let's get that. This is pretty equal width. That looks pretty good. And then I'm actually going to grab just this ratty paintbrush here and try and push the bottom of that, because that, oh, okay, sure, that's fine too. I want that, and there we go. That's what I'm talking about. So that now that end isn't at an angle, it's kind of straight up and down, which again is not the end of the world. But like you see there, how the front, how that's at an angle. If I kind of pull this a little bit, kind of fold it underneath there, then that is more straight up and down, which is perfect. Oop, let's use this last little piece here for the end. All right, and now we're ready to go. And so what I'm going to do now is get some Vallejo Model Color White. Instead of doing primer, if you have a white primer that you like, you can always, use that instead. That's fine. I like Vallejo Model Color White. So that's what I use. Back so I have something to grab onto. Ooh, come on, there we go. Okay, again, test it on my hand, make sure we're ready to go. And the reason we're painting this white is because we're doing yellow over it, and it just will not, the airbrush yellows that I'm using are so thin that they will absolutely not show up over a dark gray base coat. So we have to come back, just do a quick reset with the white, which is fine, no big deal. Try not to do it all in one go. We're just doing a couple thin coats. The most important thing is just to make sure that it's even, because again, because the yellow's so thin, any kind of pooling or any kind of defect is going to show up, and we're not going to be able to fix it. The paint's just too thin to fix. So biggest thing is just making sure it's even and smooth. Great. Wait for that to dry. And we're going to wait for that to dry and be right back. Okay, now that that is dry, I'm going to come back and do a overall base coat on the yellow of Model Air Yellow Ochre. And this is just kind of your bog standard yellow, but it gives us a nice, oh my god, there we go, nice little base coat there. Alright. Alright. And again, we will let that dry. And return shortly. Okay, and the next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to go a little bit backwards and we're going to glaze in the shadows now. Whereas with like the gray, and typically when I'm painting, I'll do, you know, you do a dark base coat and then you work your way up to the highlights. This is kind of starting in the middle and then going up and down. So for this, I'm going to take this burned flesh, and this is kind of the secret sauce for this orange or for this yellow scheme. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go try and match the shadows with what I did with the gray. So kind of on that back third of the drone, and then here kind of towards the base of the antenna there. So really get in there. And the base of the antenna, I'll wipe off the top because I do not want that to be that burnt flesh color, and then the underneath the antenna as well. Perfect. Do the same thing here, back part of the drone, underneath the antenna, and then the kind of the sides at the base of the antenna. Just get a little differentiation there at the bottom. I'll reinforce those shadows at the back. And I like this burnt flesh color because it's a little desaturated. It's not just, you know, orange. A yellow shadow is not actually orange. It's kind of a warmer flesh tone. Orange has a lot more red in it than, you know, a typical shadow. So we're not trying to make it, you know, it almost looks kind of flame-like, which is not... really is not the look we're going for. And now the beautiful gold yellow, I love this color. Super saturated, really vibrant. You can see it there. And this is going to be kind of an overall glaze. This is going to blend the shadow and really bring out the highlights. And so now what we're going to do is just give a nice coat of that golden yellow, and you can see how that just brings the scheme to life. So if you look at the side over here, yellow, fine, and then here you see how much richer it is. And we are going back into that burned flesh area at the back there. And that's really, and this paint is very transparent, so we can do a couple, we can do a couple of layers without worrying about building up paint or losing all the shadows or anything like that. So And now the important thing that I try to do when I'm doing any kind of masking like this, I don't want to wait until the paint is completely dry, because I don't want the paint to necessarily stick to the tape, even though the tape is designed so that doesn't happen. You know, I'm paranoid. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these little tweezers here just so I don't rub anything. And then we're just gently going to peel back. Same thing on this side. Boom. Pretty good. Little bit of bleed right there, but that's okay. We can address that. Not a big deal. Boom. Really nice. Boom. Really nice. Again, a little bit of bleed there at the back. But you can see how striking that scheme is already. Just fantastic. Just fantastic. So let's kind of zoom in here, and I'll get my little palette out so we can really quickly take care of those bleeds and then do some highlights real quick. So you'll see this comes together super fast. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of this dark gray blue and what is going on with my, why is this so, come on. Okay. Nice sharp brush, a little bit of the dark gray blue. And then what I'm going to do is resting my hand on the table to keep it steady, and then resting my finger here. Very lightly going to come in. Maybe a little bit of that field blue on the palette as well. And mix just a little bit in there. I'll lighten it up just a touch. Nope, not enough. Trying to match without getting too straight of a line on the airbrush part. So again, we'll come back here. Same thing on this side. The key here is this paint is very, very, very thin, because it doesn't need to be, it does not need to be, like you can see here how thin this paint is. And we just kind of just doing a little quick touch up. It does not need to be very thick to obscure just the overspray from the yellow. Like so. Okay, perfect. Overspray taken care of. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this pale blue. Again, nice sharp brush. Thin paint. Make sure I have a nice tip. And then using the side of the brush at an angle. Just going to come, oop. Now I'm going to lick my finger and just wipe that off. That's how easy that is. I'm going to come through here. Just a really quick, sharp edge highlight on this little rim on the drone here. Reload the brush. Get that interior. I'm still using the side of the brush, but very, very much close to the tip of the brush. And the key here is that thin consistency on the paint, so that I don't have to apply a lot of pressure to get the paint onto the model. The more pressure you have to apply, the thicker the line when you're edge highlighting. I'm just getting that lead edge from the front. Come back here, that front edge there, front edge there. And you can see how much that edge highlight really helps that drone stand out. Do the same on this drone. There we go. Again, very, very, very thin, very light pressure. Oop, oop. See that was, I had to apply more pressure because I was getting impatient. And then if we wanted, again, with the paint very, very, very thin, we can even come in here. And if you want to get a little fancier, just really quick, I'm going to slowly move towards and there's a little scratch. There's a little scratch. So you can give some scratches to the front here. Again, very little pressure. Just to give it a little bit of character. Show those savior protocols at work. Make sure to come back and do it on this one as well. But the key here is just barely getting within range and then boom. And then just leaving very, very light scratch. Making sure that we're changing up the angles. So they're not just looking like they're all going the same direction. Make sure to get near the edges here. A couple little scratches. There we go. And then now I'm going to get my ice yellow. And do the same thing here. Very quick edge. Make sure to get this edge and the back. And then with the antenna, kind of get the top there. Get these different segments in the top there. And then I don't fuss too much about the sides of the antenna, but you know, we get the end. Yeah, you can go, you know, you can get as detailed as you want. I think that is pretty good. You can also come, you know, you can come down here and do this, which also helps. That looks nice. This is a very, very, very good standard for an army. And as you can see, it is not that time consuming. I think the times that I spent letting it dry was just a couple minutes, you know, per section. And again, that's something that if you're doing a batch for an army, by the time I get done airbrushing one color on, you know, 10 guys, I'm ready to move on to the next color. So this is a scheme that was developed for batch painting, for army painting. All right, and the tops, so that's the discs on the drone finished, the main kind of armor colors here. I think these look pretty great. I mean, this is a great scheme. I love this scheme. So for that's gonna be it for part 1. For part 2, I'm gonna come back. Before part 2, I'm gonna paint the underside of this black. I'm gonna paint all this stuff black, and then when I come back for part 2, I'm going to show you how I edge highlight. Let's move these over to white so we can really get a nice, there we go. I'm going to show you how I edge highlight the black and also paint the lenses on the little targeting array here. And that will really give you the majority of the color scheme for the entire army. Tau is can be very straightforward when it comes to the palette, and I think that's when it looks its best. So hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Stay tuned for part 2 where we finish these little guys off. So see you soon.